What is up, guys? So I have an anatomy quiz today, and I'm going to be showing you guys a bit of what I study to prepare for this quiz. So this quiz is going to be on the urinary system, so it's going to be covering some details there. I'll just show you guys some of my notes I take. So how my notes kind of look like. A little bit more. Some of the chemical processes right there. Goes on and on after that, a few pages. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of a quick summary of the lectures I've been going through, and hopefully you guys are able to understand and maybe do well on your anatomy quizzes on the urinary system. Okay, let's go. So the urinary system, so it's really one organ doing all the work: 2 kidneys, 2 urinary bladders, 1 urethra, and 2 ureters. Okay, so it is also going to reference pictures in the book, so I'm going to be showing you guys some of the pictures and the things I study in the book. So this figure right here shows the kidneys in the retroperitoneal position. Position of the kidneys. Okay. The urinary system is in the back of the body. Retroperitoneal sit behind the back in the parietal peritoneum. Passes the peritoneal membrane to the kidneys. Pulling away the back wall of the parietal peritoneum to get to the kidneys, there's the liver, the stomach, the large intestine, the pancreas moved away so that we're able to view the urinary system in this figure I just showed you guys. The functions of the urinary system or the kidney is for removing nitrogenous waste in the body containing nitrogen from food. It's used to synthesize new amino acids. So removing nitrogen, and we're going to be using that nitrogen to make some amino acids for making new proteins. Some of the nitrogen should not all be excreted. Some should be saved in the body and sent to the liver. Like the liver, the kidney is all about communication with the bloodstream. The liver has antitoxin processes. The kidney does not do metabolic functions like the liver, detoxification, vascular, and secretory functions. The kidney regulates the ion content in the blood and the extracellular fluid. Some of the ions that are regulated include in the kidneys are sodium, chloride, potassium, and calcium. Making sure the blood has what it needs and doesn't have excess ions. The third function of the kidneys is to regulate acid-base balance, so hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. Hydrogen is like an acid and bicarbonate is more like base. So regulating those. So nitrogen, potassium, sodium, chloride, calcium, hydrogen, and bicarbonate, all of these ions are regulated by the kidney. So the 3 functions of the kidney are removing nitrogen to make amino acids, regulating ion content, and regulating acids and bases. Those are the 3 we discussed so far. My professor asked the class, when do nitrogen and hydrogen become a problem? It's when they become armistice in the cell. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like cardiovascular tissue constricts the center blood vessels and change heart rate. So the 4th function of the urinary system or the kidneys is regulating blood pressure by dilating and constricting certain levels, heart rate. The 5th function is the metabolic control of red blood cell production. The hormone erythropoietin is secreted from the kidney and goes into the bloodstream and travels to the red bone marrow from blood. So the kidney is important because it's part of red blood cell formation. Metabolic control of red blood cell production. Yep, that's the fifth function. And the sixth function of the kidney is to assist the liver in the detoxification of blood. So the liver does all the work and the kidney just extracts from blood what the liver has done. The liver detoxifies things and the kidney grabs the remaining detoxified stuff from the blood and excretes it. So it gets that nutrients and uses it and gets rid of it. Okay, and then the next day we had a recap. So the six main functions of the urinary system, most being done, of course, by the kidneys. So number one, ions are involved in the functions of urine. So we're going from atoms to an amine. An amine is for that is NH2. NH2 is used to help make up a protein. The constituents include nitrogen, which comes in the form of food and gets broken apart into amine constituents. The NH2 grows off of amino acids. Okay, next figure. Okay, next is a figure of the structure of a kidney. So we can really see all the parts of the kidney here. The amine makes up a negative and positive charge on the nitrogen. So we're going from an amine. So the body needs to figure out what to do with the ammonia excreting through the kidneys as a non-toxic form formed in the liver and excreted in the kidneys. Okay, so we're going from an amine to ammonia, and we don't want ammonia because ammonia is toxic. So we have to think of a way, the kidneys have to think of a way to get rid of that. So the liver detoxifies ammonia by putting it in the form of urea. Okay. The amine group, NH2 acid group. An amine can act as a buffer, taking on a hydrogen ion and becoming NH3 ammonia. Ammonia is bad because it kills cells, so ammonia is toxic. We don't want ammonia. To stop ammonia from killing cells in the liver, the ammonia is combined with carbon dioxide. So in the liver, ammonia is combined with carbon dioxide to make it urea. So the formula is amine plus an acid or hydrogen forms ammonia, and then ammonia plus carbon dioxide forms urea. Urea is the safe form, a detoxified form of ammonia. Okay, so why do we always have a ready supply of carbon dioxide all the time? It's because of cell respiration. So, and what's the number one issue of kidneys? Getting rid of nitrogen waste from amine groups becoming ammonia. We don't want ammonia in the body, basically. Cellular respiration, cells are taking in oxygen, doing their metabolic things, spitting out carbon dioxide as a waste product. There is no shortage of carbon dioxide at this point, like the liver wants. The liver wants carbon dioxide, and you end up with urea, whose form is CH4N2O. Urea consists of two amine groups, two NH2 groups, a carbon and an oxygen. Whoa. Okay, urea is a less toxic form of ammonia, a form of ammonia combined with carbon dioxide. The kidney isn't used to metabolic processes. The kidney is used to grabbing a whole lot of blood and putting it back in the rest for excretion or the filtrative system. Okay, so first function, ions are involved in the functions of urine. We've seen that through amine being converted to ammonia, and ammonia detoxified by the liver by combining with carbon dioxide to form urea. So that's the first one, ions, functions in urine. And then the second function for the urinary system is regulation of ion content in a lot of the ions in the blood. Regulate means, to regulate is to control levels of based on current needs. There has to be a feedback loop. Kidneys regulate ions in the blood, making the decision whether to conserve the ions in the blood or excrete the ions by dumping it into the urine. Acid-base regulation, deciding whether to keep hydrogen ions in the blood or does the kidney excrete them, depends on the blood pH. If the pH of the blood is high or very basic, the blood becomes more basic than it should be. But if the blood is becoming more basic than it should be, the kidneys will extract and excrete some of the bicarbonate ions. So bicarbonate ions are important to keep blood basic, so to regulate that and make blood more acidic, the kidneys will remove bicarbonate. The kidneys will take out more bicarbonate from the blood and excrete it into the urine. If the blood pH is becoming a little too low or too acidic, then most likely hydrogen ions will be removed in the case. How does the blood pH in the kidney become too low or acidic? It's, well, when we exercise. When we exercise, we're creating acidic conditions, producing carbon dioxide every time we exercise, and cells metabolizing, producing carbon dioxide, and water. Every time carbon dioxide is produced, it combines with water. And when carbon dioxide and water combine due to exercise, they form carbonic acid, H2CO3, which is transferred in the blood. So carbonic acid is, of course, an acid, making the blood pH very much more acidic. So carbon dioxide plus H2O forms carbonic acid. So increasing exercise and cell metabolism causes production of more carbon dioxide and production of more acidic conditions in the body using buffer mechanisms such as breathing. Okay, next figure. Okay, so this next figure is more on the chemical side of things. You can see the transport activities happening here at the different tubules. Yep. Okay. So the kidney is removing hydrogen ions, making it less acidic and stopping formation of carbonic acid, H2CO3. It's similar to the chloride shift, switching chloride with bicarbonate ions, deacidifying blood, sending them into the urine. The lumen. Okay, kidney is a buffer system for blood pH, basically. The kidney can't excrete carbon dioxide, but it can excrete more hydrogen ions if we're following it in blood. kidney can excrete carbon dioxide. Kidney. Because there's, of course, hydrogen ions in the blood. Because there's acids in the blood too. Tying up hydrogen ions by binding to them to hemoglobin. Deacidifying, so taking hydrogen ions out of the blood and acidifying urine. Regulating blood volume and blood pressure. So if you have increasing blood volume, you have increasing blood pressure. If you have decreasing blood volume, you have decreasing blood pressure. Okay, let's see how we're doing with time. Okay. Gotta get ready for that quiz soon. Okay, so how does the kidney do this? Regulating blood volume, blood pressure. It makes a decision of whether to leave more water in the blood, raising blood pressure, or to take more water out of the blood and send it into the urine. If it sends water into the urine, it's going to lower the blood pressure. This is done with the help of endocrine hormones. Okay. The fifth function, which leads us to bit of a summary. So regulating blood volume and blood pressure, so it's more on water. If there's a lot of water, that's going to increase blood pressure. If there's less water, then there's less blood pressure because water is being sent into the urine. So the fifth function of the urinary system is the control of red blood cell production. So the kidney isn't really involved in this story of red blood cell production, except for the fact that the kidney is the source of the hormone erythropoietin. Erythropoietin is a hormone produced by the kidney, sent into the red bone marrow, where red blood cells are generated. I had that before. I know I talked about erythropoietin. Oh yeah, right. Hormone erythropoietin is secreted from the kidneys, goes into the bloodstream, and travels to the red bone marrow for red blood cell production. So kidneys, important for red blood cell production, because they produce the hormone erythropoietin. Okay. Continuing. So the sixth one, the liver assists the kidney with the detoxification of blood. With metabolic processes of blood. So we talked about the liver detoxifying those ammonia. So I think the formula was amine plus hydrogen or an acid forms ammonia, which is toxic in the liver. So in the liver, it combines with carbon dioxide to form urea, a safe form. So major structures of the kidney. There's two kidneys, two ureters, leading from the kidneys down to the urinary bladder, then to the urethra, and then out of the body. This set of kidneys is retroperitoneal with some important structures. The kidney has a fibrous capsule covering it. There's no visceral peritoneum because behind the peritoneum it has a parietal peritoneum on its face. The kidney will then drag it out of the blood and excrete it into the urine. Okay. It's shaped like a kidney bean. It has a dip in the center of the bean called a renal hilus or hilum. Hilus. Okay. I guess we're going back to that original figure of the anatomy of the kidney now. Renal hilus. Okay. So there's also a renal sinus, so it's inside the hilus. Inside the hilus, there's a cavern in the back. The cavern is a sinus or hole. The sinus starts at a wide mouth called the renal pelvis, the top of the ureter, which branches into smaller rows, so 4 large highways, a collection of small streams leading into a bigger river called calyces, singular calyx. Calyces are major and minor calyces. They are not obvious to see when you look at an actual kidney. So a bit of a comparison now, renal medulla versus the renal cortex. So there's renal pyramids. All the pyramids together constitute the medulla or the core of the kidney. The renal medulla is the core of the kidney. The renal cortex is the outer region of the kidney, not within the pyramids. Renal columns are the dividing tissue between pyramids. Oh, stress. The vascular system of the kidney. So next is this figure. So the vascular system, the figure shows the vascular system, how the blood circulation meets with tubing of the kidney, back and forth between blood and the urinary system. It's fed by the blood. My professor said we do not need to know all the vessels between these two. So the major vessels we need to know are the renal artery. The renal artery brings blood in, one of the bigger arteries bringing a lot of blood to the kidneys. The renal vein, which takes the oxygenated blood out. The afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole. So there's about 1,200 milliliters of blood that flows to the kidney. There's a glomerulus, and all these vessels ensure that the kidneys have access to the blood. Okay, so the nephron. So nephron is the functional / working unit of the kidney. It has lots of cells working together. It's like a working unit. It has a lot of them. On to the next figure for this, the nephron figure. Okay. So the nephron pulls things out of the blood and decides whether to keep it and send to urine and send into the blood. So the kidney does its processes through a series of events. A series of events in the kidney include 1, filtration, 2, reabsorption, 3, secretion. I'm going to talk about the first one. So filtration from blood to the kidney tubules. Filtration involves taking things out of the blood to the kidney tubules. The second one is reabsorption from the kidney tubules back into the blood. So reabsorbing things into the blood, filtering things out of the blood, then reabsorbing them into the blood. Okay. Then there's secretion, so secreting things out of the blood and into the kidney tubules. Moving substances out of blood into kidney tubes. An example of this would be filtering out, like filtering is like a sieve at the beach. Only certain things can go through. Story of out of blood and back into the blood. So pushing on the blood because there is pressure on the blood happening, so pressure from behind. So physiological differences between the three processes is filtration is like a sieve of a push, allowing things that are specific size to go through. There is no active transport issues, so push like a protein in the blood. It happens due to pressure from behind. Filtration takes everything out of blood, where at the kidneys everything is screened and filtered to the point where only proteins small enough can fit through. So like I said, anything bigger will stay in the blood, but smaller things will be filtered out, such as glucose, 3 and amino acids are filtered out because they are small enough to come out. Filtration happens at a little site called the glomerulus. Plural would be glomeruli. So there's about 1 million nephrons, which means there's about 1 million glomeruli working per kidney. Lots of working units. So we get to know the two kidney arterioles. So the afferent arteriole is bringing blood into the glomerulus, and the efferent arteriole is taking blood away from the glomerulus. So knowing the filtering story of the kidney, not much metabolism going on here like the liver. Next figure is on the locations and structures of cortical and juxtamedullary nephrons. So cortical nephron is most likely in the cortex, and juxtamedullary nephron is very near the medulla. So the glomerulus is a bundle of capillaries into which blood is being sent through the efferent arteriole and blood is leaving through the efferent arteriole. The glomerulus is connected to a whole series of tubes. Microscopes look like a cross-sectional tubing. So what is this tubing about? It's about giving blood access to your filtrate over a distance of tubing. So the blood has chances to remove and add things in. So there's so we're giving blood access to your filtrate over a distance. Okay, so there's about 6 stages of exchange. So there's a first one at the proximal convoluted tubule. Or I guess we start the efferent arteriole to the glomerulus and then to the proximal convoluted tubule for exchange. Where exchange happens, so reabsorption. The nephron loop, descending and ascending branches for more exchange. Then there's the distal convoluted tubule for even more exchange going on. And then there's the collecting duct, which collects what is left and can still do some exchange. Kidneys are in service to the blood, basically. And then there's also the efferent arteriole, taking blood away from the glomerulus. Okay, figure 26-7b. So talking about the cortical nephron. So once blood goes into the glomerulus, it does its filtration and leaves the glomerulus. It doesn't then go out of the kidney. It then has the job of being passed around this tubing, so that there is more opportunity to exchange, and it wraps around the loop of Henle, and it goes up and wraps around the distal convoluted tubule. Blood supply that is staying in close contact with the kidney apparatus. Okay. The two types of nephrons, cortical and juxtamedullary nephrons. So figure 26-7a, the general appearance and location of nephrons in the kidney. Juxtamedullary nephron is a longer loop it's used to conserve water. It's beside the medulla. It's a cortical nephron. Unlike the cortical nephron, cortical nephron is a shorter loop. Humans have 80% of cortical nephrons. So humans have more cortical nephrons, or we have more cortical nephrons. Higher animals have a lot of juxtamedullary nephrons because they have to conserve more water. Humans, we don't need to worry much about conserving water because we get a lot of water already. So we don't need to know the difference between the different nephrons. It's just nice to know. The third and fourth function of the kidneys involve regulating blood and water levels in the blood. The nephron loop is retaining water in the blood before the urine leaves the body. Okay. Conserving water in the blood and passing it back through the tubes. So it's like recycling with the nephron loop for recycling water. Vasa recta is not such a branching mesh of capillaries like the cortical nephron. It's very long. Okay. Capillaries, branching capillaries, vasa recta. Okay, next figure. So the next figure is of a renal corpuscle. So we can see the macula densa, the juxtaglomerular cells, the efferent arteriole, the glomerular capsule, and all this leading up to the proximal convoluted tubule, beginning that nephron. Okay. The renal corpuscle has capillaries that allow a red blood cell to fit through them. So the filtration process. So these are the steps. So blood enters the glomerulus from efferent arterioles, then to the efferent arterioles, and each capillary is surrounded by a membrane of filtration systems. Like a sieve system, membrane surrounded capillaries in cross-section. The capillaries are a little bigger than the walls of red blood cells. Okay, jagged walls. 2610. Okay. Now we're going into glomerular filtration, which includes glomerular hydrostatic pressure, blood colloidal osmotic pressure, and filtration pressure, and capsular hydrostatic pressure. Okay, so we have podocytes, foot cells with processes, and pedocells, pores/slits formed by endothelial cells, which limit what can fit through capillaries. Ions, solutes, and water can go out, metabolic waste, production of cell respiration, urea, uric acid, creatine, phosphate, sodium, and nitrogen. So only certain things can go through these pores, podocytes. These slits and openings. Proteins, lipids, and triglycerides are too big, so they can't fit out. They're all under pressure, outcoming as ion goes. The push from behind allows more things to be filtered out because the urinary system can't make decisions of blood if it has access to the blood. So into the glomerulus capsule and out to the proximal convoluted tubule, then to the distal convoluted tubule. So the filtrate is being processed, exchange is happening in ascending and descending connecting tubules. The macula densa has sensitive cells on the distal convoluted tubule. Smaller size sense water and sodium left in the filtrate. Juxtaglomerular cells are sensitive cells tapping into the point of filtration. Kidneys need feedback, so these sensitive cells. So there is some reading at the distal convoluted tubule. The reading of pH, carbon dioxide, and filtrate levels next to the glomerulus. So it looks like macula densa and juxtaglomerular cells are used in terms of reading different levels: pH, carbon dioxide, filtrate levels, water, and sodium chloride. Okay. So reading the filtrate, feedback reception. So blood is pushed into the afferent arterioles. Kidney assists with maintaining blood volume and blood pressure. The kidneys can sense blood pressure using the walls of the afferent arterioles, whose walls are sensitive to blood pressure. If incoming blood pressure is low, then there's lower glomerular filtration pressure, which affects the glomerular filtration rate. If there's a lower amount of filtering of water, if the afferent arteriole will sense low pressure, less water is filtered. So low blood pressure means less water filtered. So low blood pressure, less water filtered out. GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate. Glomerular filtration rate, measured as a critical indicator of how well your kidneys are functioning. Filtration, removing water, bring it back into the blood from kidney to the blood. The capillaries losing fluid and ions through pores. The hope is that you'll have enough hydrostatic pressure to keep pushing fluid out of the arteriole and into the capillary bed. On the venule side, there's a net pull inward because lots of fluid is going out because of the higher concentration in blood fluid. Fluid's not going out into an interstitial space. Fluids are going out into a capsule for some back pressure. Glomerular filtration rate is affected not just by blood pressure, also affected by back pressure pulling fluid into blood by osmotic. By osmotic pressure pulling, keeping fluids in the blood. Back pressure produced by the capsule, so hydrostatic pressure or blood pressure, pushing fluids and ions into the capsule. Capsular pressure, capsular pressure is more of the back push. Osmotic pull things back into the blood. Net filtration pressure results from three pressures working back against each other. Net filtration pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury. it should end up with a net filtration of fluid outwards. Low blood pressure is not efficient filtration, and net filtration will be in the wrong direction. Kidney dissection. Kidney disease is the flow of blood in the wrong direction. Okay, that's all for now. I gotta go take that anatomy quiz. Wish me luck.